Today, I welcome Meagan Price to the Deep Life Podcast. Meagan is a compassionate healer with Healing Time. She specializes in Medical Qigong, Reiki, shamanic healing, and over 100 modalities to create personalized, intuitive healing sessions. With a deep passion for holistic wellness, Meagan integrates her diverse training into each session, offering tailored approaches to physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Her expertise allows her to connect with clients on profound levels, guiding them through transformative healing experiences. Meagan, welcome to the Deep Life Podcast.
Thank you.
You have certainly a ginormous resume of all these different modalities and healing experiences. I would love for you to kind of back up a little bit and tell us more about how you became the person that you are today. What prompted you to engage and learn and research and then become this incredible healer that you are today?
I love that question. I grew up in a family business here in Utah. I love the work. I love to work. But after 20 years of chasing that horse, of beating the pavement and all those things, at the age of 22, I was diagnosed with MS. And I had worn my body just kind of out. It was really rough. And at 22, I was so young. I just gotten married and all these things.
I was just going to say 22 is so young for an MS diagnosis. Is that uncommon?
No, it's actually more common. So between the ages of 19 and 24 is the most common. More and more, though, now we are seeing diagnosis of MS later in life, and we can talk about that and why that's happening.
Okay.
But because usually most people hear about an MS diagnosis at 40, 30, some odd, and much later in life, but it's most common, and the original was most common in your early 20s.
Interesting.
And we can talk about why.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get to that for sure. That can maybe be after you describe a little bit more of your story, because that's very fascinating too.
It is very fascinating. I went on to all these wonderful meds, and what Western medicine is doing in all those regards is so wonderful. About 5 years ago, almost 6 now, I was just recovering from having a baby, and I went back on medication for MS. And within just 3 short months, they diagnosed me with a secondary disease from the medication I was on for MS. And they were sure it was a disease called PML, where your body begins to rapidly eat the gray matter of your brain.
Oh my God.
And because your gray matter is responsible for like all the things.
Sure. Yeah. Pretty important.
It's a terminal diagnosis. Most people live anywhere between 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. And it's not necessarily reversible. And at the time, my baby was like 8 months old. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to leave behind this beautiful little life, and everything I had created, I loved. And so I began to do research, which is my go-to. My formal degree from a college is in university studies, which means I got so far, they were like, you have like 300 credits and no degree. We would like you to get out of here. Can you like choose? No, I can't. I just want to study. I want to learn more. I'm so excited. And that skill suited me really well when I hit this wall of like, okay. And I did what I do best. I started to study. I looked for anyone and anything that said they would give more time, that could offer a healing that would give me a second chance. And so I did. I started research into everything. And I have traveled the world to do it, and which means I ended up like in a lot of weird basements with a lot of weird ladies. And it means I ended up in the most beautiful places and monasteries and studying under the northern lights and finding a new way of thinking and a new way of capturing my life again. 6 months post the secondary diagnosis, they rescinded that because they're like, it must not be PML. We tried to test it. It keeps coming back inconclusive. We don't know what to do. We're just glad you're not dead. It must not be PML, and we'll keep going on with traditional treatment, which is great. And then from there, I mean, at the time of diagnosis, there were like over 23 lesions in my brain from the MS, and now there are less than 9.
Oh my God.
And I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you don't know what that is. And right after I had my baby, and now like I just don't have that. I'm back to having like regular periods and wonderful, like rebalancing my hormonal system, and that's super fun. I forgot why it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a journey. And love it, and falling back in love with that process instead of like when I was 12 and I was like, this is just a mess and it's nonsense. Except for this crap. Now, I mean, I'm actually loving it. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's honoring that part of us, especially the female body that we're inhabiting in this lifetime.
Yeah, and the rest that it requires, that like of that winter season, and those hormones that come through are on purpose of like, ooh, slow down. This is a reminder. Just take a pill. Got it. Okay. And so it's really has been a wonderful journey. About 2 years into that journey, I had suddenly collected so many modalities that I was like, I want to help other people. I want other people to feel this peace and joy. And what is that like I mean, like if I could share that with just one person, it would be worth it. Mm-hmm. And so I started Healing Time. And now we are 3 years into a beautiful business and have helped hundreds of people and taught tons of certifications and classes, and just opening people's minds to paradigm shifts of, what if it wasn't this way that you were taught? What if it was something different? And what if it could be because you chose it to be? So it's a little bit about how I got here.
I've had so many goosebump moments as you're speaking. So Meagan, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story, because I am not a parent, Dan, and I do not have kids. Our listeners know that. But I don't know. I can maybe just feel that sense of mother instinct within you. There's so many gems here that I want to dive into. And because you have such an extensive background, I mean, we could spend hours talking about the different modalities, but I know that we're going to focus on just a couple here. But one of the things that a couple things that I want to point out, I absolutely love that this couple-year journey that you went on really turned almost like this pain into a purpose for you, where you're now serving others, because absolutely, like within this third dimensional reality that we live in, you know, obviously we're individualized, but we are connected at the deepest level. So our hurts can hurt other people in that way, but our healing also helps heal others, because of course you now have this wisdom. And I think most importantly, you've got this energetic signature to be able to handle what and who comes in this path of your journey here on life. So I'm so appreciative of that. And you lastly kind of talked about how the perspective shift is really big in this. And I always listen to this gentleman called, I don't know if you've ever heard him. His name is Peter Crone. He's called the Architect. Yeah. And he says that it's a bold statement here, and I've said it a couple times on the podcast, but we're not victims to life. We're victims to our perspective of life. And it seems like you've got that mindset, like, okay, 100%. Why is this happening to me? And I love that you turn this, like, instead of doom and gloom, oh my gosh, I'm going to leave my baby, my husband. Okay, let me spend the next 12 weeks, like just soaking up as much love as I can. It's like, no, it's almost like I don't accept this. How can I turn this into something that's going to make me a better human in this lifetime? And I love that. So before we jump into kind of medical Qigong, because I know that we're going to go there, describe to me why we're finding MS in the older generations now.
Yeah. So some of it is easiest to describe in my own life. And it's connected to medical Qigong. All got to come back perfectly.
Yes, so perfect.
When I was very young, this desire to be wanted and seen and loved that is innate in all humans, and across every culture I have visited, and across you sit down with someone and they're like, I just want to be loved. And so like the questions of like crazy things of like, why did you decide to like have your genitals mutilated? Why did you decide to stay in an abusive relationship? Why have you decided to stay in a job you hate? Why? The answer is the same. That core desire to be a part of something and to be seen for that light that you are and loved for it is innate in us. The thing is that we're taught at a very young age to seek it here, right? Seek it outside of ourselves. When in reality, all we were ever trying and all we ever wanted was this acceptance care.
Yeah.
And even that truth is something I can like cognitively understand. I'm like, yeah, I get that. But my body can't remember that. And my body doesn't know how to get there. At a very young age, yeah, right. And so that's all I do now. Now I just teach you the tools of here's exactly how you get there. It's a super clear roadmap. But the desire for that left me in a space, in a home that was abusive by all measures of that word you could possibly imagine. And in that space, then I began to hate my female body. So when I started my period, it was really challenging. And I was like, I hated this. And it was so much hatred. And I didn't know how to like stop and just even like deal with it. I was like, no, I have to keep going forward. I have to be the straight A student. I have to be involved in all these activities. I have to be winning this. I have to be, this is where I have to be in order to be loved, to be seen, to be important, to even like get that surge of dopamine and serotonin my own body is giving me. I have to be there because without it, I don't know how to get there. Over the course of those teenage years, I began to be like, okay, this is just in my way and I can control that. I could like, I'm done ruining underpants. I could start my period. I start my period every time, like at 6 o'clock on the toilet, it would be super helpful. And then I was able to, with that mindset shift of like, I could do that.
Sure.
And then I was like, well, if I can start it whenever I want, I could end it whenever I want. So like, I would just want to be done. Like when I get home from school at like 3:15, whenever it's done, however many days that is, I'm just going to be done. So, and then I was able to regulate that. And then I was like, this whole like, is it going to be 7 days? Is it going to be 4 days? Is it going to be, I don't know. I could control that. You have 4 days to finish up this nonsense from 6 a.m. in the morning till 3:15. And I just slowly began to control my life and something that's so natural, something that's such a part of the feminine body, and being like, no, it has to be different because I am not enough with this nonsense going on. As I began to control that out of so much fear, my body responded. My body was like, yeah, okay, we can make that happen. Like that's okay. Eventually my body heard me say, I hate this part of me and I don't accept it. In traditional Chinese medicine or medical Qigong, your ovaries and are your second kidneys, and your kidneys are related to the nerve energy. The nerves would be the secondary tissues of the kidneys. So we talk about your ovaries or your testes being married to your kidneys.
Interesting.
It's interesting. And in that, the nerves are a secondary part of that. So with my kidneys and ovaries in this battle of will, they were like, no, I can, my frontal lobe controls this form and it will be what I want it to be. And the second that happened, it was like, okay. So anything that is naturally vibrating or harmonizing in the natural form of what my kidneys or the water element would have been in my body is clearly not who I am. It's clearly not a part of who I am. And so my immune system said, okay, anything with a signature is a foreign body.
Yeah.
And so it began to attack my nerves. And it said, this is not who you are. You are not this person. This person has decided it's something else. And so it just began to literally eat away the myelin sheath, which covers the axon of a nerve. We can have a biology lesson if we wanted to, but we don't have to, of your nerves. That's enough. And it was like, this is not who she is. And so you can't live here. But the thing is that, I mean, eventually for me, that realization was like, okay, I have caused so much self-hatred out of being wanted and being loved and in desire of someone else to give that to me, that I can accept that. Now, that realization came 3-4 years into this healing journey, and before I was even put together the two and two of like, oh, me hating my feminine body was clearly part of me having MS, and that need to control everything in my life clearly is affecting like the weight and my hair and acne. And okay, I understand that all these other things that I think I'm covering up or I think I'm hiding or think I'm fixing are just symptoms of the larger problem, which was my own self-hatred.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that.
And so that realization is what brings about this piece of like, okay, if that's the case and this caused it, then only this can fix it.
Yes, 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 yes. That's what I was thinking this entire time as you were speaking. Yeah.
Right? My prefrontal cortex has to let my foot off the gas. I have to let my foot off the pedal and say, okay, I do love my body. I do. My body, can you imagine at 12 telling your body to do something and it being like, okay.
Not at 12. That's
shows up for me all fucking day long. My body shows up for me all day long. And it shows up for me in 1,000 different ways that, I mean, like, I don't know if you can tell, but I am a larger woman. This is just the body that I am carrying around. And like, my body carries me around with strength that is unprecedented and with structure and form and the ability to channel more energy than you can possibly imagine. My body holds everything for me. And it comes on this, and I mean, like, I'm married to a man, and we together create this beautiful harmony and balance between the masculine and feminine and giving and taking between each other. And it's so beautiful. And that came from this house that is holding only my eternal soul, right? We call it the Yuan Shin, the original spirit. This piece of me that is housed inside of this form is what I truly love. The outward expression of that is what I've been fighting. Like, it's the bad guy. And I tell my son and my husband, I mean, we also work a job at 9 to 5 together. And I tell him all the time, it's like, I tell Tristan, it's like, it's not you against me, my son. It's not you against me. This is not like, it's the two of us against the problem. The problem is that school has to happen. We live in a country where that's legal. We have to go.
Yeah.
We have to learn. So you're not allowed to leave the school. You're not allowed to go into the school without shoes on. It's you and me against the problem. It's not mom telling you have to. It's the two of us against the problem. It's the same way with my own physical healing. It's not me versus my body. It's not me against my own soul. It's the two of us or the three of us. We call it in Qigong, your Jing Qi and your physical body, your energy body, and your spirit body. It's the three of us against what you're battling.
Oh my God. I love that example and bringing it down to life, everyday life.
Oh yeah, put on your shoes. Seems like the simplest request, but it's not. It's not. Okay. If you have a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old or children, it's hard.
Like I said, I don't, but like all of my girlfriends do, and I watch them, and it's beautiful to witness from others. But I'm also like, oh, I'm not doing that right now. Like, send you lots of love, and but yeah,
just love them, and it's good to keep my stuff far enough away from them so they can have their own. It's great. Yeah. It's a journey, but it's also, I mean, like, that's the piece of that. Okay, I understand how I got here, and I understand now the shift that needs to happen is that I get to go back and return to that moment. Because, like, if you don't have kids, but if you've ever held a brand new baby, you're like, God, this baby has got like body shaming issues already. Like, no, a child doesn't come like that.
Exactly.
You don't ever hold a baby and you're like, man, God, this baby is gonna like be scared and in fight or flight for their whole life. No, they don't come like that.
Absolutely.
Teach them that.
Yeah.
Which means that you have been taught that. And the same way that a baby comes in all its perfection, and a baby, you'll even hear mom say this. My mother-in-law says this a lot, that like babies come with their love. They just come with it. And like, how am I going to love this baby more? I don't know, but they come and I'm like, oh, they just came with that.
Yes. Yeah.
And they do, which means if babies, and it's easier like as an adult with an adult brain that is like fully developed, I can be like, yeah, okay, I can see that. But the extrapolating it that needs to happen is that if that's the case, and my baby came with all its love, came in this perfect little form, that means that so did I.
Yes. Yes.
I showed up here perfect. I accepted the programming. And the part where you talked about victimization, we go around our lives being like, well, my parents did this to me. I just like, but that's not true. And in our home, we don't allow you statements. You did this. Nope. I understand that you chose those feelings, and those feelings inspired an action. that you didn't agree with, but I didn't like carve the pumpkin without you. That's not what happened.
Sure.
You
Yes.
chose that the pumpkin wasn't going to be perfect. And so you chose to let your feelings ravage your body and throw a fit. And so you missed out on the opportunity to carve pumpkins with mom.
Yes.
None of that was me. This
Yes.
is another real life example from Saturday. Okay. This was not hypothetical.
No, I love it. Keep those up. That's how it's relatable to the audience. Yes, and it is, because we talk so deeply and can get very philosophical and esoteric, and then people kind of lose it. So it is very nice, like I said, to bring it down to life for these examples. And it all comes down, like as you're speaking, Meagan, thank you again. I just love your vulnerability here, because it's so relatable on so many levels, and I can feel your authenticity, which is just beautiful, because so many people, you know, in this spiritual, they want to be spiritual and like not have their problems, and it's like, I think that that's what makes us human here.
Oh yeah.
But what you're describing so much is that the power of your mind, of our minds, and I'm saying you just because we're having this conversation, but the power of our minds, all is absolutely incredible. If it was that definitive to control your menstrual cycle, to control how you literally like shut organs off in your body, told nerve, and unconsciously, like you weren't doing that as a 12-year-old. You're not saying like, hey, like stop doing, no. But that's how intelligent we are as souls. Like that's the innate ability that we have within us. But again, like I think that that's our biggest purpose here, is to figure that out, because there's no manual written on how to overcome these things. We do, fortunately and unfortunately, figure them out ourselves. And sometimes it's really hard in these situations that life presented you with this really tragic circumstance. But for you to overcome that, I think is so beautiful, because you also had the power to shift it. Like to the nth degree of now you're smiling and it's beautiful, your face. And I love it. I wish I could like squeeze you and hug you through just to take more of that energy on. So I can't wait to kind of continue this dialogue, and especially how it ties into the medical Qigong, because I know that you threw out some terminology, and in all honesty, like I'm not too familiar with that. I'm very familiar with Qigong, but like I don't know the terminology and the certain words that you're using. So certainly bring that into light for me, and how this kind of ties together. And the medical Qigong, where does that fit into almost like the timeline? Is that something you learned right away after your diagnosis? Okay, so start there.
That's a great question. So months before the diagnosis, my sister-in-law had a friend who ran a company and was doing medical Qigong. And she was like, I think you're going to love this company. You should go see them. And I was like, oh, cool. I'd be super into that. And like wanting to support her, and then like her network. And I kept just like logging away. And every couple of months I'd be like, hey, what was the name of that company again? I'm going to go visit them. And I couldn't remember. And then this happened. And I was like, so, and I went back through my text and I was just like, I'm going to call them first. And he happened to be doing medical Qigong.
Okay.
And I visited him for a number of sessions, and then he was like, I think you should jump into training. And I was like, oh, okay, what does that look like? And he was like, you start with self-transformation trainings or foundations, and they give you like a whole set of tools and things like that. And so I started there. In the training, once I got into training, and I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I know how to learn. Oh yeah, I forgot that this is my superpower. I can learn from anywhere. And so that's when I began to really gather. So I was about 3 or 4 weeks into my own healing with him before he was like, you should take classes with me. And I was like, oh yeah, totally.
Wow, that's not that long of a time frame.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And so, I mean, in between when he suggested I should start classes with him, and then is when I began to like really gather, and I was going to like hundreds of practitioners and hundreds of classes, and even still, like I'm in the middle of like 4 different trainings right now. I mean, like there's never ending. It's never ending. And it's awesome.
Because I feel like the more you grow and the more in my opinion, like you said something really interesting. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I want to point it out, and I want to make sure the listeners hear this because it's really important. He said you must go through self-transformation first.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And I think like it's subtle, but I want people to understand this. Well, Dan and I talk about the ego a lot on the show, and I think that that's what we're referencing. Self-transformation, our ego, creates our persona and the identity that we believe ourselves to be throughout this life's journey. Like you're saying, we're conditioned, we're programmed, we're told who to be and what to be. We almost need to set that aside. We need to heal that and transform that so then our soul can emerge from there and the light within us can bring forth the true essence of what we're here to do aside from that egoic nature. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was subtle, but that's kind of what you were doing.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, in the classes that I teach now, because I now teach medical qigong, and the first class you take is with me is self-transformation tools, foundations of medical qigong, tools for self-transformation. Because you're right, so many people, and in this world, like you can jump into a Reiki training tomorrow and be certified to practice on others within 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. The Holy Fire Reiki, in fact, you can certify in level 1. I certify kids in like 5 minutes.
Get out.
I sort of love to kids were born for this work, and this generation, the alpha generation, was literally born for this work. So I certify classes and kids and all the time, and they just come ready to do it and channel like nobody's business. But it's easy, and you can jump right into helping other people. But medical qigong, more than probably any other modality that I've studied, starts with the concept of this work. You have to do this first before you can orchestrate or serve others or anything else like that. And not that the other modalities don't know that. In fact, they kind of equate, they plan for that you need to go through your own work, but we sometimes are skipping that work. I agree. And the learning to set aside your ego is a journey. And it's not like I did it today and now I'm done. No, it's 1,000 different times every single day. I have to be like, right?
Yeah. Because it adapts and it's like, okay, so you're not this thing anymore. Okay, great. Now I get to be this thing.
Yeah. And it's not. And so one of my favorite meditations is like just diving into who am I? Who am I really? Because I'm not even Meagan Price.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? That's an illusion. That's a name I use to dispel the chaos.
Yep. It's how if someone waves to you down the street, hey Megan, like,
hey Megan. It's so they can dispel the chaos of not being like, hey, you with the hair. Yeah. Like, can you come over? No. It's the same with like time. This one's the one that I described this to a coworker just the other day, and he was like, my brain is breaking. And I was like, well, because time is not measured in hours and minutes. That's how we're using it as a control factor to control the chaos.
Yes.
Otherwise, who would know when a movie starts? Like we use hours and minutes
absolutely
to define like things in our life, and then we're like, we don't have any time.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, I understand that you have mismanaged your hours and minutes, but that's actually irrelevant to the fact that time is relative. Yes. And it's unending, and it's
yes, I think we're 100% on the same page. Dan and I taped an entire episode about how time is an illusion. He had like a profound awakening one night when we were watching like an Alan Watts documentary, and like we shared on things. So yes, and it's taken me a really long time to wrap my head around it, but it's almost like when that seed is planted, then the universe, life, the creator, whatever you like to use in your terminology, brings you more information to better understand it and grasp any concept, whether it be time or the ego or like how our mind is actually, if you think about it, I like to think, and I also got this from Peter Cron, our mind isn't in the body, our body is in the mind.
Absolutely.
Which is mind fuck to actually think about.
No, it's good. No, and that is the piece of like in medical qigong, we even talk about that. We talk about it like your heart mind or your thoughts and emotions, which is kind of how we think about our mind in this plane and in this form, in this 3D world, are your biggest field. They're part of this we call it the Shen field, this spirit field. Yeah. It's part of I don't know how much terminology you want to get into. Your Wei Qi, meaning protective, your protective fields. Okay. Some people talk about it, the aura, your aura field and things like that. So or even like your electromagnetic fields that you're creating. Your Shen field is the largest one. It extends anywhere from 20 feet from your body to like infinitely, right? This is
Okay.
where people that talk about soul travel and stuff like that, that happens up there. Versus your auric field or your chi field, which is closer to your body. That's that
Yes.
one that changes colors and things like that.
Yes.
That is like where your energy exists.
Okay.
But like that, so within that, and then your physical body is within that, or the Jing field, your physical field that extends. It's like that personal bubble that exists 3 to 5 inches from your body. But that exists within this larger field, which is kind of fun. It's kind of a fun concept. Because you're exactly right. Is that like my body is within the mind, not the other way around. Because also your mind is not here. This is your brain.
Yes.
And they
get that
different things. And so that's a fun thing to recognize, is that like, oh, right, my brain is controlling electrical impulses. My brain is controlling those types of things, but it is not my mind. Those two things are different.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like I steered you away a little bit, but I all love interesting concepts, and thank you for bringing forth that terminology and correlating it to auras and our energetic body and the body itself, because that is, I completely get it. And I know that the listeners will too, or at least the audience will. So amazing. So with the medical Qigong, like what is that working on? Like, what is it? All of the energy fields? Is it the body? Like it's all energy and interconnected. So break that down for me.
So medical Qigong is my favorite modality out of any of the ones I've studied, any ones that I continue to gather and learn. It's my favorite because one, there is an answer for everything. I have yet to come up with a question that they're like, oh, let me explain. And I'm like, yeah, wonderful. Tell me. And there is yet to be a modality that I studied across the world, across the entire world, that medical Qigong is not the mother modality.
Wow.
A weird way to say that. And so let me clarify before people get it like uppity. Medical Qigong, the oldest records that we have go back 5,000 years. And in those records from Huangdi, or the Yellow Emperor, they mention and they like allude to the previous records, which we don't have access to. So we know we're well over 5,000 years old in medical Qigong, which I like. And that like there are very few cultures that either can track it back that far or understand where it's come from. And so like sometimes when we're talking about like ancestral, these pieces even from that realm of like that they all stemmed from medical Qigong. The only other records or even work that I've studied that is quite back that far is Ayurvedic practices, and they're so closely interconnected. Just like any shamanic practices, most of us were dealing with some sort of medicine wheel, and it's really fun and that great. And the elements from medical Qigong are vast and varied, but you see it in everything. Reiki is a branch actually of spiritual Qigong.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, Usuri Sensei studied Qigong for 30 years in China, in a Chinese monastery and Tibetan monasteries, before he ever went and did the meditation, which he describes in every book that you study Reiki in, no matter which branch you study it under. Of like doing this meditation where he sits under a waterfall, and the waterfall, that's a Qigong meditation.
Oh, okay.
Then he developed, and that's why we call it a branch of Qigong. A branch of Qigong is just because it is a talisman's training. Really, is what it really is. That's what he was a master in, Usuri Sensei. But he studied Qigong first before he went back to China or back to Japan with it. Wow. Similarly with the foot zoning is another great example. This is an example of traditional Chinese medicine, Chinese massage. Yes. There are 4 elements of that. So any naturopathy, that would be those Chinese elements. The acupuncture, acupressure, that would be one of the other versions and branches, and then Qigong, which includes martial Qigong such as Tai Chi, would be another example of that. And any of those movements that comes from within, of like moving that chi.
Yes.
And working with it and cultivating it. So I have yet to find a modality that I'm like, oh, this doesn't have any sorts of roots in Qigong. No, I'm like, oh, they're all connected.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Which I love. And so I do love that. That's one of the reasons I like to study it the most. I actually can't remember the question you asked me. I'm sorry.
No, I feel like you answered it. Well, your answer, maybe I'm answering it in my own mind. I said, what is medical Qigong doing, like, to our bodies? So you're beautifully answering it, like, it's all energy.
It's all energy.
And I think that's what people like, I want them to grasp, that it's hard because within our Western medical culture here, it's like you have to see it. Like it needs to be a pill or a potion or something. And I feel like we miss it as people, like, as you so beautifully described this, I keep thanking you, like your thoughts literally controlled your menstrual
Oh,
cycle.
100%.
Like that's what it is. It's energy. Thoughts are energy. Elements have energy, as you're talking about.
But the thing is, I mean, because I mean, I have a lot of people who come. I just worked on a client last night who was like, my wife made me do this. And I'm like, okay, great. We can meet on a scientific plane. Let's talk about it. You went and you had this kidney pain and you took a pill. The pill was called a water pill. What do you think it was doing in your body? Well, it was flushing the water from my body. Okay, why? Well, because that's what it was being told to do. Why? Right, because the frequency of the atoms that were being held together within the pill are literally vibrating at the same frequency of the excess water in your body. And so what is it doing? It's pulling anything with the same frequency to funnel down the channel that water is for, your kidneys and your urinary bladder. We're going to filter it first, and then we're going to piss it out. That's what the pill is doing. And the molecules that are being put together in the pills you're taking vibrate. We talk about it in science, right, in the terms of like bonds. A bond is a frequency. It's a magnetic charge. And that magnetic charge, and why does H like combined with two O's instead of combining with anything else? Why, when I sprinkle salt over that, does it change that chemical compound? Mm-hmm. The vibrations that it's pulling it together and frequency, we're talking about the same thing. The thing is that we're using different words.
Yes.
And that to fight over that is a waste of time and energy. It's
that is such a beautiful example.
But this is exactly right. Of like that you were pulling those frequencies, those vibrations. And so we can talk about that, about like those chemical bonds. It's looking for other bonds that are similar to itself, and it's pulling those bonds together. We can talk about it in the terms of that, but like that witches brewed potions and now we take pills that we're like, no, Western medicine says this is okay and they're different. That's obvious nonsense, right? Like two things are clearly the same thing. Just because it's done in a lab coat makes you feel better, it's fine. But that's part of the, when you're very young, in the very first stage of your life, 0 to 6-ish, or almost when you turn 7, mm-hmm. Your mind is in this constant theta stage, right?
Yeah, you're basically in hypnosis state.
You're basically in hypnosis the entire time. And so at a very young age, we're taught, we go to the doctors, they give us vaccines, everything's fine, it's going to take care of you. And then you kind of keep that. To dispel that is a challenge, to open your mind to that different type of paradigm. So you asked me what Medical Qigong works on. Everything. Yeah. It works on everything. And on all the levels, which I love. And so, I mean, if it's, you're coming because you're like physically dying, which is where I was at, or if you're like, I am in an emotional recurring pattern of depression, wonderful. If you are in a spiritual crisis of like, and I live in Utah, Utah largely is known for being the home of the Mormon church.
Yeah.
Love. I was born and raised LDS, love the church, love all that. It's a great part of my life and my story. While I am no longer, I've stepped back from the religion largely because I wanted to be, I'm a little bit more spiritual than I am religious. That there's this piece of, as there's been a mass exodus from religions.
Yes. All over. Yes.
All over in Utah. I mean, I deal with that a lot of like, I now no longer know how to connect to the spirit because I'm so angry at a company because you bought into that. That's, again, that victim mindset. I deal with that a lot of like, the church did this to me and I can't believe it. And it's like, ooh, that's like saying Facebook did this to you. It's a company. They're moving as slow as the slowest person. You chose that. And even at a young age of like, right at that time I was in a theta state, we just talked about this hypnosis nonsense of like, my mom told me that this was true. And so I believed it. And now I'm here. Okay. But you agreed.
Yes.
And in that stage, especially when you deal with little kids, you're like, no, those little kids come knowing. They come so programmed to like, no, my son teaches me more than I would probably ever teach him in my whole lifetime. Like he's constantly just, I'm like, yeah, that's really profound and that's really intense. And okay, I see how I was wrong and I can eat that crow. Let's adjust and go from there. But kids come that way, which means that I came that way, which means that I agreed. I agreed to that belief. I agreed to that. I was never a victim to that, which this is the hardest conversation to have, because I'm with people that come in with cancer, people that rape victims that come in and have to have that conversation of like, I've stopped calling them, I've stopped calling them traumatic. You have all this trauma. No. You have been through survival experiences.
Oh, I like that.
I like it too. I switched it. Because everyone is walking around with something that you have been through, something.
Yes.
That you were specifically designed to go through this survival experience. The trauma is what you chose to take from that and shove inside of your body and make it live there forever.
Yes.
That's nonsense. You are the only one that chose that. These things happen, but you are the one that chooses how that's going to affect you now. And I'm not suggesting that you stop feeling those things. I'm suggesting that you deal with how you're feeling them.
Beautifully said. And I could not agree more. And I love that we're so much in alignment with these thoughts and concepts, because the victim mentality that so much of our culture likes to cling on to, it's hard for people, people who have gone through extremely quote unquote traumatic experiences, to let go of that, because it's part of their identity. Exactly as we spoke earlier, it's part of their egoic identity, and if that's gone, then the question arises, well, who am I?
Who am I?
And that's really scary, and it's really scary for the ego. I don't know, but that opens up a world of possibilities. Like, imagine who you could be without this narrative and story that's been tethering you to a worrisome, stressful, anxious life that you can't, debilitating pain and everything. And I love that this essence of who you are, Meagan, as a person, has recognized this and then can help others too, because I love it. So with the medical qigong, sorry, I feel like this is the last kind of question before we move on, because I love that you spoke briefly about how the medical qigong is tied into all of these other modalities of Reiki, and I'd like to talk about that and how that kind of is really a metaphor of life and how we're all interconnected.
But I love that.
Yeah. The medical qigong, like when you're working, so you gave the beautiful example of this gentleman who came in with so what in that aspect do you do? Are you moving energy with him? Like, are you giving him something? What's going on there?
Good question. So there are 3 different branches of medical qigong, or of qigong. So martial, medical, and spiritual.
Okay.
All 3 do different things. Medical is the perfect blend of martial and spiritual. Okay. So when they come in, people sometimes expect TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, and they're expecting, like, if you go to China and you walk into an herb shop and you're like, okay, I just left spending $1,000 on all these magical herbs that are going to change my life. Okay. But because what you and I have been talking about is that this is a mental paradigm. And I do need to take in, like our diets are devoid of amino acids, and our bodies are struggling then to produce the freaking neurotransmitters that we need to be happy. Sure. That's a conversation that needs to be had, and it is part of the nutritional is part of this. But the recognition that, like, oh, that's happening because our minds are controlling that. Okay, I can work backwards, right? I can start at the beginning and work to that. Sure. As well. Right. It's nice when we're doing both, but one thing at a time. Okay. So when someone comes to me for a session, and I like when it starts with table work, is that we go in and yes, I physically am like cleaning their kidneys. I'm dredging their liver. We're purging and then tonifying it all and making sure that it all works again together. Purge, tonify, regulate, and making sure that everything is working in harmony. We're regulating the digestion. We're releasing the heart walls. We're purging the lungs, and all the time, every session, stuff comes up that's stories.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I see stuff with your mom. Oh, that's really rough. Oh, I see all these betrayals that you have experienced and how that's left you, that like you had to be in charge when you should have just been a child. Oh, I see all this fear of not being enough and all this. And then it's more organs than it is, that's not true. I was going to say that it is chakras. Most energy systems, almost every single one talks about the chakras.
Yeah.
And that's something we can talk about because that's maybe a whole nother conversation.
Yes. But if it makes sense to bring it in, please do so.
Because, and I work on the chakras almost in every session, but that the chakras are an emulation or a pulsation that comes from your truest soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they come from. That's what they exist. But how the energy that exists in the purest heavenly divine state, it shows up in your organs. And so working on the organs, and not only that, but like when I talk to a client, they're like, oh, I know what my liver is. I can imagine that. I know that my liver is a filter. I understand that if I drink too much, it's going to affect my liver. Like people can understand that a little better than like, so your solar plexus chakra, within your solar plexus, they're like, ooh, that's too much.
Sure.
And so you're kind of meeting them there. But you got to remind me of
the chakras. And you were talking about the
and what I do in a session. So we purge, tonify, regulate the whole body. And then at the end, this is the most important part, is that I am not doing anything. As a conduit for the light, I am helping you reset so you can be like, oh my God, that's what it's like to feel like without that pain there. And I can like get my bearings again and go forward. But I'm not doing anything. And so the energy that we place in your body, the regulation, it lasts for about 72 hours, give or take. And we end with an exercise. This is an exercise to help you re-regulate this thought process, to purge, tonify, and regulate. These are the 3 pillars of wellness. Every single, and it doesn't matter, pick a modality, pick a lifestyle coach, you are doing these 3 things. You're getting rid of the toxic stuff, adding the good stuff back in, and then regulating your body. Purge, tonify, regulate. Over and over and over. Over and over and over. Rid the old thought forms, add better ones back in, and then make sure that everything's working together so my body can keep moving forward. Beautiful. And so we give you exercises, literal hands-on tools of like, here is how you're going to purge. Because it makes sense of like, yeah, I understand that I need to change the thought form, but how? Here is a 30-second exercise that's going to do this for you. That's what we specialize in. And from there, after we recommend that people come in for about 6 to 8 sessions, and then they move on to trainings because you have to recognize that I'm not doing the healing. So I have a couple of clients who have come to me for 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, so the price increases, and this is the deal, is because if I have other practitioners you can go to that will do this for you, of like, you want to go out and party and drink all day on Saturday and then come to me on Monday to have me like regulate your energy, that's fine. It's 3 times the price than what, right? Yeah. Like I'm here, and this healing time is here for deep, personal, long lifetime healing. That's what my mission is here. I have other practitioners who are great and wonderful and will do that for you at a third of the cost for probably your whole life, and you'll probably be fine. But that's all what we do here. And we are doing deep personal healing, people that are looking for genuine change.
Yeah, it's transformative. Like it's literally lifestyle.
Yep. Which is hard because that's less people. I mean, right? We'd rather take a pill than decide I'm going to change my life.
1,000%, because it's hard, because we've got to let go of the person we think ourselves.
We think we are.
Yeah. And then I love, I don't know, maybe you're picking up on my intuition, because I literally was thinking about, I wonder if she's going to bring up the fact that she's just a conduit for this healing. The actual human that she's working on is the one that's releasing it. You're just the mediary, like in between.
I'm not doing anything. And I just say that to people all the time. I tell my clients all the time, like, just so you know, I'm doing nothing. I have cultivated a space and the training so this conduit can be clear. Yes. I should do my work every day so my clients can come and I can be a clear conduit for them. Sometimes when we hear that word, that we think medium, and it's not the same.
Oh, sure, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
They are different.
I mean, I know, but you can certainly go.
No, that's great. But just, I mean, like that concept of like that I am channeling divine light and heavenly earth, and that combining them together to manipulate that combining. And I actually talk about a triangle of wisdom is that, and that you have to have all 3. So we have wisdom and knowledge. And the third one up here is fear. And you have to have all 3. You can't have any one without the other.
Interesting. Yeah.
And knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. And wisdom without knowledge is unbelievably unsafe.
Sure.
And so it's the combination and how all 3 of those meet together, which is how we do sessions. And the fear of like, am I getting out of my own way so I can just be a conduit, is a big part of letting the knowledge and wisdom funnel through me.
Yes. That's what I wanted to like bring, that like subtle sentence that you said. You were preparing your vessel. You were doing the self-work. That's what it means. It's like clearing out the stagnant muck, the traumas that we've held on, as big or as small as, you know, being told you were ugly in school, or your teacher and a parent not being emotionally available. Like that's very traumatic for us as kids.
It is.
Okay. You briefly touched on, and I want to make sure that we kind of tie this in. How does, you know, medical Qigong correlate to the different healing modalities around the world? Like you talked about Ayurveda, and they're this, like, let's do this together, because yes, we're all interconnected. We all are uniquely beautiful, different representations of the same thing, of source, God, life, whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And we all have different ways of healing our bodies, but yet, and different ways that we describe it, different terminologies. You know, you so beautifully talked about the Qigong word for aura, which I've already forgotten, but they're the same thing. So because you've traveled so much, you've gained all this wisdom and knowledge, what overlapping kind of themes do you find within these healing modalities and energy, and how is it all interconnected?
One of my favorite ones is, I mean, everything. So you ever look at sacred geometry and you're like, well, why is this a sacred geometry? It's because every culture has the same stuff. Every culture in the world is using that same spiral all the time, and in 1,000 different ways, but it's that same spiral. And I'm like, someone somewhere, you're all tapping into the same thing. And
it's on our logo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. It's everywhere. You see it everywhere, and you're like,
I did that on purpose.
Yeah, okay. And even like the mandala, you're like, well, why is it this? It's because every culture has some version, and not just culture, scientific study, religion. We're using the same symbolism, no matter who is interpreting where you got the download, right? Because that's all that science is doing, is it's interpreting it in a different way. And it's the same with any religion. Religion is getting the exact same downloads, but how they're interpreting it speaks to you one way or the other, which is beautiful. And similar with any other energy modalities. And so that's the fun part. One of the, like, the shapes that you see, I'm like, yeah, every culture has those. And so, which means we're tapping into something that we maybe don't know, and that's okay. Because even like, right, we want to talk about like the orbits of the earth and how they're not all round. When they orbit around each other, they keep creating what symbols? Oh yeah, there's the mandala. Yeah, there it is. And so, like I said, it doesn't matter. We want to talk about science. We want to talk about it comes from any standpoint, is that it's the same. So the shapes are one of my favorite shapes. The concept that it all starts with the breath is actually one of my other favorite ones. That most cultures say that, and some variation of that perhaps, but that it starts with the breath.
Yes, I read that. You know, sorry to interrupt you. You know, I just want to, I think I was drinking like some sort of tea, and you know how they have sometimes like the little like sayings on like the tea. I read it in this stuff. This was years ago. Like, the breath is the language of the soul.
Yeah. It's also the glue of the soul. Not that it matters, but like, it's like what holds us together. It's this glue piece. And so it starts with the breath, and that's the same in medical Qigong. It's Reiki, breath work. I mean, any of the shamanic practices, that it starts with the breath. And how beautiful that the energy starts there, because that's the one part that I can always come back to. I may not have food. I may not have any of my crystals or magic tools. I may not have any, but I always have my breath. It's always with me, which means it is my biggest tool. Similarly, something else that almost everyone talks about, but again, in different terms, is that frequency, the vibrations. And largely, I think that's because it's something we can feel, and we understand it because we can feel it. Because even like the scientific community will talk about it, like the electromagnetic pulses coming from your body. Absolutely. It's because we can understand the vibration, because I can feel it. Someone beats a drum over me, I'm like, yeah, I can feel that in my body. Yes. I understand it. And every culture talks about it in some way, of like that. How is this being created, and why is that affecting my physical tissues so much? Which is cool. And so that's one of those pieces of like that it's all tied together that I absolutely just adore, that I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. One of the other pieces that you see constantly is the yin within yang.
Yep. Yes.
This concept of the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter which culture you're looking at or where but that there's some version of like it, like the bottoms of your feet represent your whole body, or right, that your teeth are all part of your, or your map of your body, or that, right, like there's this concept of like my physical body is a part of a bigger culture. And so I can be very focused on myself and still affecting the culture at the large, or vice versa, right? Of like, this planet is a part of the cosmos and it's affecting what's happening out here. And if the earth goes into turmoil and explodes, it's going to affect everybody. Okay, we can talk about it in scientific terms or in the energy world, but this concept of like that you are affecting the greater whole, even with, I mean, like any religion, and the concept of prayer, that I can go and I can pray, and as I pray and as we pray as a group, we are affecting change. And we have scientifically proven that. We know that like people that know they're being prayed for heal faster.
Yes.
This is a thing, because this comes from the acceptance of that. And so I really enjoy that that concept of the microverse or the macroverse, of that you're both, and it's so cool. And it's the concept, because sometimes when people see the yin yang, oh, I know, maybe I can show you. I have it everywhere. And it is my giant gong. Can you see that?
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful? It's my new fun toy.
Gosh.
It's my favorite. People see that yin yang symbol and think that it's a stagnant picture. But in fact, it's spiraling constantly in and out, up and down, and moving both directions. Where yang is consuming yin, and when yin is consuming yang, they actually kind of sandwich each other over the top of each other. That and like that's something that you see everywhere, and that everyone has some variation of that. That's so enthralling. I do love that.
Yeah. I love it. And I love the way that you kind of have interwoven these modalities. And as we're wrapping up, I think that this is such a beautiful place to touch upon before we say goodbye, because I feel like I don't want to like leave you. I just want to keep talking. But the felt sense of interconnectedness of our humanity is very prevalent in what you're saying. Like, it does not matter what race you are. You could be black, white, yellow, orange, purple, whatever. It doesn't matter the religion. It doesn't matter where you are geographically. Frequencies exist, energies exist. We would not be alive if we didn't breathe. That is something that we all have in common. Hello. And what you're so beautifully saying is like, now these traditions of philosophy, spirituality have been around for so long, where of course scientific discoveries and quantum, energetics and the quantum field and all of these discoveries are newer over 100 years, but they're saying the same things. And it's appealing to different groups of people, because certain people like the scientific aspect and they want to understand, or they can grasp that much better than like the woo-woo scientific. Fine.
Absolutely.
All saying the same thing. And I think eventually, we're getting to the point of this beautiful merging that's already happening, and the consciousness levels rising, that we're going to understand it so deeply at the micro level, and then look out and like, oh, it's macro. Duh.
Yeah, it's both. How wonderful. Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think that it's a beautiful way for us to all embrace our humanness and love the individuality that we all host, and like our unique gifts are here to be shared, because in some way or another it's helping us see one another, the light within to blossom. Like, I have no idea what humanity's purpose is. Like, I don't know, but I think it's to love and accept one another, not to create more wars and division and separation. And I'd love your opinion as we're wrapping up here. Like, how can we bring a more unified love, as opposed to keeping everything so separate into, borders and states and religions, and like, we're all one. Like, the human race is an overlapping umbrella.
Yeah. I mean, I think my answer may seem redundant because it's the same answer that it would have been in everything. Purge, tonify, and regulate. You want to know how we get there? You got to purge, tonify, and regulate. We got to begin because even every division that we've created is only created out of a need for safety. Us versus them is an actually very core and essential part of our DNA.
Yes.
That right, bears, dangerous, not us. Okay. My tribe, not going to kill me. Check. Yeah. Right. Like this is a good thing. But the concepts of division now, where we are now. I live in this state, you live in this state. I'm red, you're blue. I'm black, you're white. Whatever. Pick the analogy. This is, I'm a man, you're a woman. It doesn't matter. Wherever the dividing lines are illusions that we are trying to feel safe in, because the lack of safety is coming from, I don't know who I am. And so I take on identities that I then have to defend. And the thing is that we're all looking for protection, but the concept of protection versus safety, right? They're different, because protection is this. I'm keeping this safe, right? All here is my space and I'm going to protect it. My thoughts, my beliefs, it requires someone is going to attack you. That's what you're sending out when you're thinking that, like, I have to defend my beliefs. All you're saying is that someone's going to start attacking me and it's going to happen. Versus I'm safe because I know who I am. And I'm not gay. I'm not white. I'm not Utah. I'm not Meagan Price. Those are the roles I've taken. I'm not even a mom, right? That's not who I am.
Sure.
I have taken on those roles here and now to fulfill a purpose, to fill the void that was meant and perfectly shaped for me.
Yes.
For my light. And in that, I have taken on these roles. They do not define me. And every time we let an identity become a role, become an identity, even like, I'm angry.
Sure. Yes.
Those emotions are just as much of an identity as anything else. I'm depressed. Okay, this is now who you are, not what you're feeling, not a role you're filling right now. This is now an identity. Those identities come with boundaries and defenses to keep you safe.
Yeah.
We're just hunting for that same safety that no one else is going to give you. No, and even like it's in our DNA to like tribe together with people that are similar so we can protect each other.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. But strength in numbers.
Even that is like, oh, I'm binding together with people filling similar roles so I can defend a part of me that I don't even care about.
Yeah.
Right? I care about making sure that I live a beautiful life. I actually want to be peaceful. I remember the very first time I ever let down a heart wall and let myself see myself without that ego of identity. And the next day I was out on a playground playing with my son and I was like, oh my God, is that what joy feels like?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've never felt that before. I've been calling this the wrong thing. I didn't know that this could exist. But that happened because I was able to set aside those identities that are not helping you.
Yes.
And here's the thing, is again, well, how do I do that? How do I set those down? The answer is the same. Purge, tonify, and regulate. Over and over and over again. And you think you've done it? You think you have purged, tonify, and regulate? You think you've done it? Guess what? There's more. If you were done, you'd be dead. That's the answer. Of like, if you're still here, it's because there's more to purge, tonify, and regulate. And let's do it, because I find so much awe and wonder in it, because if this is how good I feel today, oh my gosh, what is going to happen when the next stuff comes down? When the next identity no longer defines me? Yeah. It's going to be amazing.
Mind blowing.
I know.
Oh, I love it. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I feel like that was such a beautiful way to wrap up. Know thyself. Really, that is really, and that's exactly what this is, the podcast. It's understanding self-discovery, self-development. I mean, it's a process, but it's the most beautiful thing. And I have this saying that I've been, talking about for at least 5 years within this wellness spiritual journey that I've been going through. It's just, it's a beautiful destruction of who I thought I was. And it's beautiful because it's dissolving away these different areas and labels of who I thought myself to be, to really only gain more and
Yeah.
dissolve those too. As you're saying, it's cyclical,
It's cyclical,
spiral,
and it is.
and it is vertical. That's the ascension.
Yeah.
That's kind of like I was saying that spirals within our logo. It's meant for like a vertical ascension. It's just 2-dimensional, not 3, because our human form is linear. It's like past and future. That's all the ego can like understand, and it tries to live in the stories of the past and projecting in future. But it's that linear progression of ascending up this spiral, understanding who we truly are at the deepest core of it. And you've just so beautifully described that, Meagan. I honestly have it's been an honor to sit here with you and share the space and listen. We have covered so much, and I'm so grateful for the depth that you brought to this conversation. I will absolutely link Healing Time in the show notes. I have a question though. I know that you're in Utah and you obviously work a lot of this practice like in person. Do you do anything virtually online?
Absolutely. So
yes,
every session that I offer also can be done from a distance, which I don't know if I can do this or end this with this, but I'd love to give every single one of your watchers or listeners a free session.
Oh my gosh, please. Yes.
And so message us on what's best, Instagram, Facebook, message us and send us an email. And say that you've listened to this Deep Life podcast, and we would love to give you a free session from a distance, or if you live in Utah, we'd love to have you. So
okay, oh my God, I'm gonna be the first one to sign up. Yes, and absolutely, that is so generous. Thank you, Meagan. That is amazing. So as we wrap up, I mean, you did such a beautiful job like encapsulating this whole conversation. But do you feel there's anything else on your heart that you'd like to share that we didn't cover?
No, I think it was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor to be with you.